Meanwhile, activists say at least 4 people have been killed in a refugee camp in Turkey amid an exchange of fire on the country's border with Syria. Turkish officials say 6 others were injured, but Syrian activist reports of fatalities cannot be confirmed. The Turkish officials say 4 Syrians and 2 Turks were wounded on Turkish soil amid the clashes. Authorities in Turkey say the Syrian army fired at gunmen who tried to escape to the refugee camp after attacking a military checkpoint in Syria. The incident caused panic and protests in the Kilis refugee camp. Turkey has become home to thousands of Syrians escaping the violence in their country. Well, just to discuss the situation there a bit further, we're being joined by author and historian Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Dr. Tarpley. Now, by demanding a unilateral ceasefire, first of all, the U.S. is jeopardizing any chance of achieving true peace in Syria now, isn't it?
Well, that, of course, was never the goal. The entire Kofi Annan exercise was a maneuver. Kofi Annan, of course, is widely discredited. He enabled the bombing of Serbia. He enabled the 2003 Iraq War. He's known for his duplicity and for his treachery. So the way in which those demands were couched always contained a tremendous element of unreality, because the entire burden, the entire onus is put on the Syrian government. And there's no systematic addressing in those points of Kofi Annan over the fact that the insurrection or the destabilization of Syria, the troubles of Syria, are largely imported. These are NATO death squads. These are officers from the United States, Britain, and France, and Qatar, most likely. These are members of the CIA, of the Joint Special Operations Command, and they're commanding this rabble of patsies, al-Qaeda fanatics from all around the Middle East and far beyond, from Chechnya all the way to the Maghreb. So this is an outside operation. Mrs. Nuland today has reached a new low point of cynical hypocrisy with her attempt to give the responsibility for this to the Syrian government. And indeed, this is another flaw in the entire Kofi Annan approach, which is that under his system, there's every incentive for the NATO death squads to keep up the fighting, to keep up the killing, force the Syrian army to stay engaged, knowing full well that at the end of that, Al Jazeera will arrive and the BBC and France 24, and they will say, aha, another crime of the Assad regime. So the deck is completely stacked. The demand that the Assad government is making, that the rebels must commit to stopping armed struggle and joining the elections, which are now beginning, the campaign is beginning, that is not a new demand. That demand was made repeatedly by the Syrians during the shuttle diplomacy of Kofi Annan. And it's, I think, Kofi Annan's trickery that has kept this sort of way on the back burner, or essentially out of the news, the whole time. It was not a misunderstanding. It was that Kofi Annan was up to his old tricks.
Well, we'll get back to that in just a bit, but analysts do point out, just as you've outlined, that Kofi Annan's deadline for tomorrow will be nothing more than just symbolic, and that the Syrian government right now does have a strategic advantage over the armed opposition. Coupled with Turkey's threats of war, though, if the armed rebellion in Syria is quashed, will we see foreign intervention?
Well, this is now the big danger. It's about 8 days now since the so-called Friends of Syria, really the enemies of Syria, conference in Istanbul. Going into that Istanbul Syria conference, there was a lot of chatter to the effect that President Erdogan of Turkey was going to take the plunge. In other words, a gesture of reckless irresponsibility, the attempt to carve out a buffer zone in northern Syria. And if you look at the events of today, they are at least coherent with setting up a situation where Turkey can attempt to do something like that, which I think would be a giant step towards a large-scale regional war, which would lead to the breakup of modern Turkey in the process, whether Erdogan and Davutoglu can understand that or not. So right now we're sort of waiting The accusation has been made that Syria has wounded some Turkish officials in the border area, and then there was this angry statement from the Turks. Obviously, they would be well advised to keep cool and not be sucked into this situation, which would be highly detrimental to them.
And just very, very quickly, if you can, looking at the way things stand, what does this mean for Kofi Annan's six-point plan? Because as you've already pointed out, this wasn't really an honest attempt at peace, given that it only made demands of the Syrian government and no other player.
Right. I think that somehow Russia and China have done a great deal, and they've made important contributions. But any attempt to deal with the Syrian situation has to start by recognizing the main fact, which is this is an insurrection fomented from outside. And the vast majority of the fighting forces are foreign fighters with foreign officers. The Syrian government has been very reluctant to bring this to the attention of world public opinion. They have captured French officers in Homs. They have captured French and other foreign mercenaries in Homs and other places. And instead of putting them on trial or making that into a big international incident, they have quietly just gotten them out of the country and sent them back to where they came from. This entire effort cannot succeed. The essence of a peace plan would be to say Syria is under attack from foreign groups. This is the overwhelming majority of what's going on in military terms, and that has got to stop. Otherwise, there can be no peace. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. That was author and historian Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley joining us there from studios in Washington. Dr. Tarpley, thank you for your comments here on Press TV.